Hi everyone. It's great to see you again. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. Today, we have a brand new story to share with you. So, let's get started. I wasn't supposed to hear it, but I did. It was just going to be another night at my in-laws' house. It was boring and predictable, and everyone pretended we were the perfect family. As I left the kitchen to go back to the living room, I heard my wife's voice. She spoke quietly, as if she didn't want anyone else to hear. I did, though. Mom, I swear I have to fake it every time because he's a joke in bed. After that, people laughed. My wife's mother laughed sharply, as if she knew what she was laughing at and thought it was a joke between them. Along with being funny, it was also insulting, and the thought of it made my stomach turn. In the middle of my step, I stopped, frozen in place. What I had just heard was making my brain work very hard. I could no longer hear or see the world around me. The words made the sounds in the house less clear. Though I wanted to move or breathe too loudly, I held on tight to the cold glass of water in my hand. I was afraid they'd figure out I was standing just around the corner. It would have been rude of me not to walk in and talk to her right away. No, I wasn't afraid of a fight. I didn't do it because I felt like this was more than just an argument. You can't go back from this kind of moment because it changes everything. I heard it. My mother-in-law said to me, "Oh, honey, that's just how men are," as if I were some bad thing her daughter had to deal with. He's good for other things, right? Another laugh, and another wave of disgust hits me. I never really thought about how I felt about my mother-in-law before. She had always been a little cold and condescending toward me, but I thought that was just how she was. I told myself it didn't matter because I wasn't married to her. But as I stood there, they couldn't see me, and I heard them talk about me like I was a sorry excuse for a man. It became painfully clear. It wasn't just a careless joke or a slip of the tongue. They thought I was less than. Something changed inside me. It was a quiet but clear realization that the marriage I had been hanging on to and working hard for meant something completely different to her and to them. I stepped back and quietly went to the bathroom. As I put the water glass on the counter, I locked the door behind me. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw a blank face. My mind was running, though. How long had she been like this? Had this always been the case? I started to think about little things she had said during our marriage that I had ignored over the years. The nights she walked away without saying a word, the times she seemed impatient, and the times she rolled her eyes when I tried to start a romantic conversation. I always thought it was because she was tired, stressed, or busy with other things in her life. But now I was wondering if she had ever really wanted me or if I had been lying to myself the whole time. That word, joke, stuck with me the most. I wasn't hurt the way she might have thought I would be if she ever thought I would hear her. No, it was something else, a strange mix of slow-building anger and insight. It didn't make me sad or broken. I was done. I forced myself to stay calm and took a big breath. There was no reason to storm out of the bathroom or have a big fight. Not yet, because it was about more than just that one moment. For the first time in a long time, I stopped seeing my marriage through the eyes of someone who was trying very hard to make it work. Not like that. I saw it for what it really was, and I knew right then that things were going to change. That's not because I was okay, far from it. I walked out of that bathroom like nothing had happened because I needed time to think, to watch, and to see everything for what it really was. When I went back into the living room, my wife and her mother were still sitting on the couch, drinking wine and laughing about something else. It was like their little joke had never happened. But I had a different view. I had a different view of them. Being in that place wasn't just something I did when I sat down across from them like I always do. I was reading it. When my wife looked at me for a moment, I couldn't tell what she was thinking. She then turned back to her mother. There was no sign of shame or worry on her face. That's what made me feel the worst. There were no awkward looks or second guessings about what I had heard. Because she didn't even think it was possible. That shows how little she cared about me. In her mind, I was just a stupid fool who would never figure it out. As I watched them talk, their voices became muffled in the background noise. I began to notice things I had been ignoring for years. Because of how her mother always talked to her, I felt less important. The way my wife agreed, nodded, and laughed at things that made me look bad, like I wasn't there. I wasn't mad, not like I thought I would be. Nobody yelled or clenched their hands, there was only silence. A quiet realization that made me feel good inside. She never looked up to me. It was quiet on the way home. While she was on her phone, my wife looked at it and occasionally laughed at something on it. She didn't care at all about the man sitting next to her. I finally understood what that quiet meant for the first time. It wasn't a comfort. There was no comfort. It was lack of interest. There was no question of what was wrong. She didn't look at me to see if I was okay. Now I know everything I need to know. As soon as we got home, she went straight to her bedroom, put on her usual loose-fitting t-shirt, and went to bed with her phone in her hand. She did that every day. I'd seen it 100 times before, but tonight I did more than just watch. I was getting it. I leaned against the bed and looked at her. Not with love or anger. Just to be clear. How was your night? I asked. She didn't even look up. It was nice, yes. Good job. I gave him my nod and looked at the floor for a moment. After that, I asked a question I had never asked before. Something that seemed so easy but was really heavy. Do you care about me? That caught her eye. The phone screen stayed still in her hands. She looked up at last. Not because of shame. Not to worry about. It's just confusion. It was like the question itself was strange to her. What? She laughed quickly and not at all. What kind of question is that? An important one. She wrinkled her brows. Of course I value you. But her tone didn't show that she meant what she said. The words don't mean anything. It was natural and rude. It looked like she was checking something off. I didn't ask for more. Since I already knew the truth. I just sat there and took it all in while she went back to her phone. The way she didn't seem interested in why I was asking. The way she didn't want to comfort me. I didn't get much sleep that night. Not because I was mad. But because I was already planning what I should do next. It took me a lot of time to be a good husband. Not being able to make things work. Being someone she could love and respect was my goal. You can't make someone like you, though. And I finally got it for the first time in years. I had tried everything. I got up before my wife did the next morning. I leaned against the side of the bed and stared at the floor. The ceiling fan was making a quiet hum. It was easy for me to think. It's too clear. That grogginess that comes with mornings wasn't there. It wasn't that. Something more pointed. I took a quick look at her. She was curled up in the blankets. Her face was slack from heavy sleep. She was calm and at ease, and she had no idea that anything had changed. I stood up, went to the bathroom, and locked the door behind me. At first, I didn't turn on the light. I stood there in the dim light of morning, my feet on the cold tile. I finally took a look at myself in the mirror. I looked carefully for the first time in a long time. Not just at myself in the mirror, but at the person I had become. I could see that my eyes were tired and dull, which I had told myself was a normal part of being an adult. About getting married. The little hunch in my back. The look on my face had changed from one of happiness to one of sadness. I used to be different from this. I used to be sure of myself. I used to be present. I used to be important. At least to myself. When did that become different? I leaned against the sink and tightened my hold on the edges. Things that I had hidden for a long time came back to me in my mind. Things I had ignored, brushed off, or just accepted. My wife always had the last word on everything. Where we ate. Where did we go on vacation? People we spent time with. The way she rolled her eyes when I talked about my hobbies, like they were not important to her. Slowly, almost unnoticeably, I stopped telling her about the things I loved because I knew she didn't care. The things I did to keep the peace were also there. I'm sorry for things I didn't do. Getting laughs out of hurtful words. She's just going to let her mother's comments go because that's how she is. Keeping my temper in check when she snubbed me in front of her friends. Or worse, when she made fun of me while everyone else laughed. For years, I had been telling myself that this was normal. That this was just a marriage. That love meant giving in. That said, this wasn't a deal. It was wiping out. I stood up straight and looked closely at myself. I wasn't mad. Not at her. Not any longer. I was mad at myself. For letting it get this far. For letting myself change into a person who didn't mind being treated like a throwaway. I remembered the night before. When I asked her if she respected me, she gave me a rude answer. It seemed like she didn't even want to talk about the question, given how quickly she had brushed it off. There was no doubt that she did not respect me. But what is the truth? I didn't like myself. It hurt more than anything else to realize that. A slow breath came out of me, and I gripped the sink even tighter. It was no longer just about her. It wasn't just about a marriage that wasn't stable anymore. It was about me. What I had turned into. What I wished to become. And if I was ready to keep living in a world where I had to beg for decent things. Not at all. Not any longer. It felt good to splash cold water on my face when I turned on the tap. I wasn't going to act like someone else for another second. As if things were going to change. I pretended that she would see how valuable I was if I just worked harder. I had seen enough. Now. That was it, she got to feel what it was like when I gave up. I felt different when I got out of the bathroom. Not in a clear way. Not in a way that would make my wife see right away. But in a way that I knew in my bones. It was still dark outside when I walked by her. She was half awake and looking through her phone. I didn't say anything. Every day, I used to say, "Good morning." I used to kiss her on the face before I did my thing. Not right now. She didn't even notice. I took my keys, left the house, and got into my car. I wasn't going to work yet. I needed our time. I didn't have a plan for where I was going as I drove. I let my thoughts rest and put together the pieces of what was going to happen next. I wasn't going to act based on how I felt. I wasn't going to give her that pleasure. Don't argue or beg on the spur of the moment. I was no longer that person. My wait for something to change was getting too long. I was going to make things different now. I didn't change my mood when I got home that night. I wasn't cold, but I also wasn't there. She was in the kitchen with her mother on the phone. She laughed in a light, carefree way, not realizing that something had changed. I walked over to the fridge and got a bottle of water. He hasn't said anything, though. The same as always. You already know how he is. How she said it. What a sure voice she had. Like I was easy to guess. It was like she knew exactly how I would act. Or more accurately, how I wouldn't. I could tell her mother was proud over the phone. Guys are easy, honey. He won't even think about it if you don't change his routine. I didn't jump. I didn't say anything. I left right away. She would never again think she knew who I was after that. I did something I had never done before over the next few days. The game was over for me. I usually text her during the day, but I didn't. No, how is your day? Don't check in for no reason. Nothing. I began coming home later. Not by making excuses. Not by telling lies. After a while. I wasn't mad when I did it. I wasn't cold. I was just, far away. When she asked, "Where were you?" I gave a simple answer, "Out." That was it. That was new for her. She was used to being in charge. To being aware of every little thing. To having me in her life as a steady, reliable person. But now. Now there was a different me that she didn't know. She paid more attention to me. Looking at things. It was hard to tell what had changed. "Are you okay?" She finally got the job when she asked one night. I stared at her. Looked at her very carefully. I saw how confused she was. She felt unsafe. She was in pain. Okay. It had been years since I had asked this question. The one making changes to fit in with her world. Now it was her turn to look for answers. I said in a clear voice, "I'm fine." I left her alone to sit in the quiet. The cracks showed up quickly. By making little comments, she was trying to get someone to respond. I said with a shrug, "You've been really quiet lately." "That's not normal of you," another shrug. It made her sick. Because it's quiet. Lack of interest. That was strength. It was my turn to hold it for the first time in our marriage. She called me more during the day and left notes all over the house, which was something she hadn't done in years. One night, she made my favorite dinner and set the table like we were married all over again. I sat down, pulled out a bite, and said, "Yes. It's good." That was all I said. She knew something wasn't right. She wasn't naive, dishonest, selfish, or rude. Sure, but not stupid. She felt something change. She could tell because I wasn't reacting the way I used to. I stopped following, I stopped asking her about her day, I stopped looking for a chance to talk, and I stopped trying to fill the gaps between us. And that scared her. Because she wasn't in charge for the first time. When everything came to a head, she was sitting on the couch and looking through her phone like she didn't care. But her tense body language and the fact that she barely looked at the screen told me something. She was ready for me to ask her what was wrong and try to pull her back in. I sat down next to her and was quiet for a moment. I said, "I heard you," in a calm voice. She blinked in surprise. "What?" I leaned forward a little and put my arms on my knees. "I heard you that night at your mom's house." Her face turned pale for a split second, long enough for me to see the fear in her eyes before she laughed nervously to hide it. "What? What do you want to say?" I didn't say the same thing twice. I didn't need to. Her grip on her phone got tighter. "You may have heard something wrong, but I didn't." That was it, just facts in a calm, even voice. I wasn't angry or upset. "I got everything you said. In bed, you called me a joke. You told your mom that you always lie." She laughed when I turned my head. "You laughed. Please tell me what part of that I got wrong." She was shocked and waiting for her mind to process the fact that I wasn't going to play along this time and let her talk her way out of this. She began, "You," then let out a sharp breath and shook her head. "Are you really mad about that?" It was just talk between girls. It wasn't even very deep. I almost laughed. "Not very deep." I slowly nodded, as if I were thinking about what she said. She frowned and said, "That's interesting. What do you think that means?" I leaned back and stretched my legs out while keeping a close eye on her. "It means I get it now." Now on the defensive, she crossed her arms. "Yes, of course." "What is that?" It was calm when I looked into her eyes. "I'm done with that. Keep quiet." She looked at me and quickly blinked, as if the words didn't make sense. "What are you done with?" Her voice got softer all of a sudden as she asked. I made a vague motion between us. Call it what you will, this, us, or something else. She tried to laugh, but it was weak. You're not making sense. Am I? I cocked my head. Because I haven't seen myself the way you do for years. I didn't care about it. I told you I was sorry. In fact, I told myself that your lack of effort and care was just how marriage worked. It's not, though. You should treat your spouse with care in a marriage. And now I see that you don't care about me. It's likely that you never have. She moved and swallowed hard. It's not true. Really? I gave a small smile. After that, why didn't you seem the least bit guilty when you said it? Why didn't you think twice before making fun of me with your mom? She opened her mouth and then shut it again. She didn't have anything. As I stood up and stretched a little, I felt lighter than I had in years. I told you the truth, I don't hate you. I also no longer love you, though. Not the way a husband should love his wife. Not at all in the way that a man should love a woman who doesn't respect him. Her breathing got faster. Hold on. I've already made plans. My phone was in my pocket, so I took it out and put it on the table. An email with the lease to a new flat was on the screen. She signed, and her lips split in shock. You made this happen. I said yes. Yes, a long time ago. That's when things went crazy. She thought she had all the power in this relationship for years. She thought she had the power to say and do anything she pleased. I would always be there for her, ready to forgive and chase after her. That being said, I was leaving now. She was now the one running. She asked in a shaky voice, "Are you serious?" In every way. She looked at me as she realized what was going on. I feel like you no longer love me. It wasn't a question, it was something I said. No, I shook my head. She looked small for the first time since I met her. She wasn't sad. Some part of me thought she would, or at least that she would put on a show. But she did nothing but stare at me while she thought about the fact that I wasn't lying. That this wasn't really one of those arguments where I'd get angry. Then she'd roll her eyes, and we'd go on with our supper. That wasn't the same, because I was already gone. I took my phone off the table, put it back in my pocket, and walked to my room. She glanced at me, but she didn't say anything. Not when I took out the bag I had packed days before. Not when I took the keys. Not as I moved toward the door. I stopped just before I was going to leave. One last look at her. She looked little. No, not in a sad way. Not in a way that made me feel bad for her. Not big. Kind of like someone who had always thought she was in charge. Only to find out after the fact that she was never there. I told them, I hope you find what you really want. I really meant it. She didn't answer. It was over as soon as I walked out the door. Something strange happens when you drive away from a life you thought would last forever. I wasn't sad. I wasn't mad. I felt pretty light. For the first time in years, I didn't have to try to prove my worth to someone who had never thought it was worth anything. I no longer had to explain myself. I didn't need to think about whether I was good enough. I didn't need to try. When I realized that, I felt free. My new room wasn't very interesting. It's a simple one-bedroom apartment with no walls or furniture. I felt something I hadn't felt in years when I walked inside, though. Peace. There wasn't any stress in the air. Not any silent opinions. Don't be afraid to speak up. Having doubts about everything you say and do. Not sure if I was doing the right thing. Nothing but silence. And freedom. I sat on my new couch with a beer in my hand and looked out the window at the city lights on the first night. I thought about everything. About how much time I had thrown away. I had spent about that many years making myself smaller to fit into a life that was never meant for me. I stopped thinking after that. There was no longer any need to remember the past. What came next was important. Once you let go, you understand how easy it really is, which is kind of funny. You hold on to something for a long time because you think you need it. Because you tell yourself that you'll fall apart without it. You let go, though, and don't break. You breathe, keep going, and never look back. Our story is over. Do you want to join our group if you've made it this far? It really helps us a lot. I've picked out 2 more videos that I think you'll enjoy. You are welcome to click on them. I look forward to seeing you in the next story. Have a nice day.